everyone, welcome to our first official episode of Jordan the Shabin. I am your host, TK, alongside our co host, Delroy. And tonight we also have a guest with us. Um, Please
Yeah,
introduce
good night.
yourself.
Good night, everybody. I was listening to Kia a little bit. I got lost. My name is Delroy Nestor, and I'm the Dread.
All right, my name is Sheldon Daru, and of course Abu Suleiman,
Right,
known on social
so,
media as Abu Suleiman.
okay, so for our episode today, we're focusing on men's health. November is Men's Health Awareness Month. So for our first topic, we're just going to be speaking more about the importance of men's health and what we can do to support the men of our society.
It's
Sure.
interesting to take here. You are surrounded by men tonight, so I expect you to be assisting us.
Yes, yes, of course.
I would say that I would suggest that, well, since she is with us, to get some feminine energy, and she's able to give a different perspective, a balance to the presentation this evening, which is fine. It is very welcome.
That's right. And as you know, well, it's as Tikia said, it's Men's Health Awareness Month, November, but there's a lot of silence, or let's say not enough loudness as it relates to men's health, and more in particular men's mental health. So we felt it important for us to look at that topic. It's our very first episode, as the Shamin said. So we wanted to be very open, very frank, and we are hoping that as we go through tonight's episode, or 2 days, or this morning, or whatever time of the day it is when you're listening to us, we are hoping that you can get some very good information from all three of us, some good tips. We are also will be assisting or throwing out some tips there to help anybody who's struggling, whether you're a man or a woman. Everybody needs tips on how to maintain their mental health. So we looking forward to a very interactive program, and I know our guest is a very frank and open person, so we are on our way tonight.
Absolutely, looking forward to it.
Yes, so I will let our guest tell us a little more about himself so we can have an understanding of why we chose him as our guest for tonight's episode.
No problem. As I mentioned before, my name is Sheldon Darrow, and known by everyone on social media as Abu Suleiman. And I have been a youth development worker at the Youth Development Division. This January 2025 will give me 8 years. I have been a youth development worker, so which means I'm a social worker, but I specialize young people. But as per Dominica's constitution, it's we focus on between 16 or 18 to 35
As you
at the
said that,
target age.
I just want to congratulate you on your recent achievement, a bachelor's degree in
Thank
social work,
you.
in youth development, right?
Youth development work, yes.
Right,
Hmm.
right. So congratulations again on that.
Thank you very much.
Yes, yes, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so basically, this is what I do. I work within the different communities. I have worked before when I began working at the Youth Development Division in 2017. I worked in the Roseau Central and South for a short time before Maria, and I went to England. I still continued to do youth work in the UK, and I returned to Dominica in 2019. And here I am. I have worked with the Roseau North, that takes from Portsmouth all the way to Vickers area. I've worked there for some time. I've also worked for about 4 years in the Roseau North area, so that the communities begin from Pottersville to Fokole area, and from Bath Estate to Copthall area. and I also worked in the prison. Now I'm back on the way to health. This deep and that would cover Kingsale, Castle Comfort, and these areas, Girondale, Eggleston, and so on and so forth. So these are the areas, focus
So I
areas in
can
the
I can see that you, in terms of your work experience, it's vast across.
very vast.
Yeah,
Yes.
and you have a number of years of experience in youth development work. 8 years is nothing to joke about. So in terms of your knowledge base, you're well grounded.
Yes, I do my best.
Yeah, as we delve into the topic, as we go into the topic, what do you think, or what do you think are one of some of the reasons why men's health or men is not really a focus issue in terms of men's development in general?
Firstly, you have the first reason you have a lack of professional support. That is number one. Two, there is a stigma around mental health in Dominica across the scope, whether you're dealing with women and men. So there's a stigma towards mental health. So these are the two main issues based on research that I've seen. And at times, because of the way that our men are socialized, they tend to linger a bit more or be more hesitant towards seeking mental health or seeking counseling when they have difficulties.
But why is that not the same for women? Because it's the same society.
Mhm.
Why do you think?
Because the mode of socialization between for the men and women are very different in in our society, very different in terms of socialization. Men are expected to be tough and hard, and the big boys don't cry approach is still very dominant and very seen in our society. In contrast to the women, they are known to talk about their issues more. They tend to talk about it, tend to report issues. It makes it a lot easier for them to report these issues. Men deal with their mental health, unfortunately, by using, I mean, it happens to women as well, but you find more because men are more reluctant to seek the help that they need, they use different outlets. For example, they would use alcohol, they use drugs, but sometimes they do use sports as well to cope with stress. They do use positive ways as well, such as sports and other recreational activities.
Right,
And
right.
on the other hand, they do use drugs, like they will drink. For example, a man gets a GP, and the natural response would not be to go and seek counseling. The natural response will go and play the boys by the dominoes and have a few drinks. That would be the natural response in the Caribbean context.
That wasn't my natural response. No?
Hey.
That's a different story. Or if you want to permit me to give it, I don't know. Uh, but my
Mm,
natural response, I remember when I had my quote unquote GP, my first GP as a teenager. I went on the wall of my neighbor. Well, the young lady was my neighbor at the time, and I had
mm,
this music player, boombox, playing Boys to Men record, singing to my voice. So you see, we all have different responses
Amen.
to
mm.
mental health challenges.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I
Mhm,
can speak to that. I can laugh today, but at the time I was going through it, it was very, very difficult. Honestly,
mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
I wanted to
Yeah.
shed a little light on
You,
my
you,
experience.
yeah, you see, Delaware, you're coming from a background where you have been leader of youth council, you've had, that kind of experience, and you're very positive individual, your self-esteem, your outlook, and so on. Hence, you're going through these challenges, this loss, then you're going to cope with it in a very constructive way. On the
Right,
other
right,
hand, if you're raised in a family setting where you may not have a very strong support system in place through your mode of socialization. What happens when you grow up with different traumas, low self-esteem, and a number of issues? Then, when a man has challenges in his life, loss of a romantic partner, for example, as you just
right.
discussed, then you have the negative aspects of dealing with that particular challenge.
True, true. I must say, but I
Mm.
wasn't always a youth leader, and I wasn't always this positive person. So those things can be developed over time.
Absolutely.
Your mental health
Oh,
risk.
absolutely.
So that
Of
is one of
course.
the things. One of the ways things we're going to get into later into the episode as to how
I look
you
forward to that.
build
Yes.
your
Hmm.
mental health and so forth. Um, but I know there are plenty young men, I mean, plenty men in general, currently suffering from mental health issues and they don't even know what avenues to turn to seek help.
Hmm.
So, if you had to recommend a step-by-step process for our men to get help, what would you recommend to them?
Well, one of the first, okay, youth development workers are like first responders.
I know that for
We
sure.
we deal with trauma, and upon discussing, upon having the one-to-one interviews, one-to-one basic counseling, if there is a need for extensive therapy, then we would recommend our resource persons. We would try to reach out to whether it's a psychiatrist or uh, a professional counselor and so on. We try to do we do this, or we assist in that regard in bridging the gap so that they can get the extensive counseling needed. That is part of my advice. So that if you are in a situation where you are faced with mental illness, especially if we're talking about our men, they can reach out as young man, or if not older man too. You could reach out to the youth officer of your district, and we're more than happy to assist as best as possible.
Yes, because I feel like too that just in general, if someone wants, therapy or anything like that, they don't really know where they can turn to.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's something, you know, um, people should be made more aware of in terms of if we do offer these services, it should be, advertised more. And
Mhm.
even if it's something maybe we say, you put it on the radio or in the schools, the colleges, and whatnot, just to have
Mhm.
people more aware of what services that are offered. Because yes, there may be a lot of people who still might not take it because we grow up in that kind of environment where everybody just don't really have a well, most people don't really have a positive attitude towards mental health and those kind of things. But at the same time, for those of us that maybe feel like that's something we want to do, I don't think it have enough um
Resources available.
not yeah, resources available, true, yes, and also just the like making people aware that it have those things available.
Well, true, true. I want to support that, and it can be as simple as a community group, or church group, or even a
Absolutely.
school to start the process in terms of as a resource for young persons. It doesn't have to take
Yes.
any big initiative. A
Mhm.
simple group, even the boys on the block can be a positive influence, but you
Mhm.
have to make you have to make that conscious decision because most
Yes.
times what happens on the block is not, I won't say not positive, but there are a lot of also negative influences on the block as well.
Mhm.
So the whatever grouping you are in or you find your support in, you have to make a conscious decision to
Mhm.
speak positively and speak positiveness and speak healing. It's one of the things as well men don't focus on is our okay, we're going through mental health issues. Yes, we know we are going through it. But we don't speak healing. We don't look towards healing. We may look for help. We're looking for help for person, somebody to tell us, do this, do that, do this. But how do we internalize our own healing as individuals, as men?
One of the things I could mention, part of youth development work is we design programs across the country or across communities where they need it. The program it's in threefold. One, where you have multidisciplinary leadership. So you get people you have different youth groups, persons from different youth groups, and they get the training They get us, for example, the first, the multidisciplinary leadership, it's 6 months. So you get to learn, you get to learn basic counseling skills, you get to be able to write projects, you learn about gender, you learn about a number of different issues, right? After you've done that, there is therapeutic counseling and advanced counseling that is done, the threefold. So the advanced counseling and so on, this will be about 3 months. Okay. So what you have is you have a cadre of young people across the island who have been exposed to some kind of training in counseling. Yes, they may not be specialized
Right, right.
counselors. However, they have some kind of training. So if someone comes to a person who has had some basic counseling skills, then at least the therapy, the whole idea of listening to this person, the whole idea of being able to have the tact and be able to at least listen, active listening can be very, very therapeutic and so on during the engagement. So these are some of the strategies from the Youth Development Division has employed to have at least a number of people within the Dominican society would have some kind of knowledge of basic counseling to be able to help someone might be in need at the time.
And peer-to-peer counseling works. There are a
Yes,
number of studies to show that it works.
absolutely.
And so I would encourage anybody who's going through mental health issues, and if they have somebody they can confide in terms of that peer, and that they feel can give them also positive reinforcements
Of
to
course.
go ahead. But we also need to encourage people to go a step further, because while
Yes.
peer-to-peer counseling may assist you in discussing the issue, it doesn't really help you in terms of the therapy and the actual
Mhm.
healing process.
Yes.
So, in your experience, Mr. Daru, should I call you Mr. Daru? I don't know.
It's okay. It's fine. You can
It's
call me
too
that.
formal. What should be the next step for somebody who's listening who doesn't know what to do? Because remember, we are all at different levels here.
Yes.
Would you recommend as a next step post the peer-to-peer? Yeah, so
Mhm.
they have gone to somebody that they know and they have related their story. Yes, it felt good to release the trauma,
Mhm.
to share
Mhm.
it a little bit, but they still haven't
Yeah.
found healing. What would you recommend that the next step to be?
Very good question. Some people, when they go to the peer-to-peer counseling, they may, because usually they may find during the discussions, they may find a remedy to solve the problem. On the other hand, when a person does peer-to-peer counseling, yet the problem still persists. The person continues to have flashbacks about the issue. The person may have a number, in other words, the what is happening in their minds, it disrupts their day-to-day activities. When this happens, when these symptoms begin to occur, when these symptoms occur, then there becomes a need now for that professional help, professional assistance. And that is where they go on. So it's what, because part of what I discussed earlier on, there is a lack of human resource as it relates to finding professional counselors.
Right,
Okay, there's a lack, and that is what the studies, those who have looked at Dominican mental health in Dominica, one of the things that they have cited, one, again, the stigma towards mental health and lack of professionals to deal with the counseling. So what needs to happen is, again, if one is having this difficulty, there's a counselor attached with government. She is Mrs. Packett. Yeah, she's attached. She deals publicly. She's a trained counselor,
right,
and
right,
she deals with the public. That's far as I remember in terms of working and dealing with people. There are also other counselors. However, they are attached to the schools, and you also have people like Mr. He lectures Mr. Holmes. Mr. Holmes. You have people like Mr. Holmes. You have people like Miss Valencia Webb. You have Miss Webb. they charge a small fee. They charge some of them about $40, 40, $50. They're about these price ranges. So there are some who are professionals who do assist in the counseling. So that's what can happen. If it's a situation where a person is it's much more um, detailed or much more severe, like the person is hallucinating or that sort of thing, then it's really one would need to see a psychiatrist so that the psychiatrist can prescribe the medication in order to provide the blockers to stop the hallucination, for example. So it depends on the level. Most of the mental illness cases here in Dominica, based on what I know, you have people who suffer from depressive moods and or depression. You have had an increase in people wanting to commit suicide over the past few years because of the trauma of Hurricane Maria. You have had COVID that has exacerbated the situation. You have had these different aspects, so natural disasters, the trauma affected by that, and COVID. You've had the issues as well.
Yeah, I feel like if we want to really push forward strategies that could help, people at every stage in life, then it should be, for example, I mean, education would be the key in all stages, but for
Mhm,
example, in the schools, that
mhm,
should be something, they start talking about in schools, because a lot of children don't get that kind of education at home because their parents still have the same mindset as their parents and so on. So that's
mhm,
something we should start in school. But I feel like also, I know you mentioned that it have some counselors attached to schools,
mhm,
but I haven't really seen that myself. I overseas they have it where there's just a counselor who is basically, maybe employed by the school or whatnot, and they're in the school every day, so that if children need to speak to them, they could just go in and speak to them. I don't know if that is necessarily something we need, but I feel like it would be helpful. And then in the context of, in the villages and so on,
mhm,
yes, we should have some kind of group for the teenagers and the older men, um, some kind
mhm,
of group they can come and discuss and whatnot. But I feel like for those people who really have that kind of mentality of like, oh, they don't want to tell people their business and whatnot,
mhm,
maybe we could think of something more creative in the sense of like, when before, um just an example, but before, long ago in the church, you would have, when people would go to confession, they would kind of have like a divide, so they could be
mhm.
speaking to the person, but you wouldn't be able to see the person. Maybe
Yes.
I feel like something like that might be a good idea for people who don't necessarily want to look at another person they feel like they could see on the road and have the person probably judging them in their mind. Because I feel like that's what a lot of people think. Like, they'll tell people their business, and then the person will probably be watching them funny and whatnot. So,
Mhm,
for the older people, that's probably something we can look at. And for those that in school and whatever, we can start the education young in terms of stopping the stigma towards mental health. Because even with me, I deal with it at home in the sense of like, you tell your parents, you're depressed or something, and it's like to them, what you have to be depressed about, as if depression is something I can just decide, so
mhm.
education and all that stuff is
What
really good
what
for
I
them.
mentioned what I mentioned about the education system. The education system as it relates, yes, it is it we have seen results as it relates to Dominicans performing very well in terms of getting how many ones and so on. Now, the education system that is current, it is still it still needs development in that the education is geared, it's still back in the industrial revolution era where you're
I
simply
want to
educating.
add to that point. The goal of education is to create employees for the workforce.
That is what I'm
Yeah,
coming to. That's what I'm saying. That's why I talked about the industrial revolution. That is what it's for. It's just geared at, it's focused on employment. However, if you're talking about the holistic development of the youth, then you need to reconstruct the education system in such a way that the child learns the soft skills, and that is
right.
where some of the mental health or some of these issues, yeah, esteem and all of that empathy,
The,
showing empathy, that is where all of these things will
the
come
coping
in.
mechanisms as well can be
Yes,
learned.
absolutely. So these will come in at a very, at a very early age, especially sports. So so sports as well as these different soft skills. So what you deal with is so what you're expected to, the outcomes of that is to achieve the holistic development of the child rather than having everything so, uh, so
Rigid, rigid.
Rigid. Yeah.
yes, they are very rigid, very rigid. So only when a child has a problem, then the child is attached to the counselor at the school.
Right.
Okay? But we need to have a lot more. We have to have what is called, more protective, more proactive
Yeah,
approaches, and
proactive
Right.
approach.
restructuring, yes, and restructuring the education system would be one of those. Another thing is many people, you know that 66% of the Dominican population, they adhere to Catholicism. You have most of the rest are, Protestants, and of course you have other different religions there.
Denomination.
There's about
Right.
67% who don't affiliate with any kind of religion. Now, the churches can play a very critical role in applying that as well. Mental health, have sessions and workshops. So all of the different agents of socialization, the churches, the schools, and these areas, very important. They can play a critical role in empowering and building a holistic individual, holistic young person.
I want to support that point and also go back to what TK was saying about the confessional, right? In terms of we're in 2024, so it's very easy to have a confessional that is even more private. A simple
Mhm.
hotline that somebody can call in without even divulging
That is true.
personal information in terms of
Mhm.
identification, and they can get that necessary support.
That is
Um,
true.
yeah,
Yeah.
so there are ways and means in which we can
Mhm.
probably use old school techniques and even update them,
Mhm.
um, provide that necessary support for our men, our young men, and so forth.
Very
And
true.
to also support Abu in terms of what you're saying about these our the role of the church, the role of our religious institutions,
Mhm.
and the role of our community groups. Because that is where we will find the necessary support because we are not a first world country with vast resources. We have to look at how we can use our resources
Absolutely.
multiple ways. So our
Yes.
community groups can double as mental health support groups. So once in a while, they probably have a session on mental health or have a quote unquote a round table among themselves. They can discuss. Maybe bring in a specialist or somebody who's trained in a particular area to also sit in on the session to give formal advice. So
Mhm.
we have to look at ways in which we can empower ourselves beyond this quote unquote the resources of the country because we have very limited resources. And in relation to the counseling, I feel that we need to have a program, probably started at schools for true, and but delve in where we can get more and more persons involved in peer-to-peer counseling because at the end of the day, we supposed to be our each other's keeper. If
True.
we go by our religious principles as a country,
Mhm.
Yeah, because I feel like if we really start, being more proactive, getting the education out there, making people more aware of those things, and they start using it more, that means we can also open opportunities for people who do want to be, psychologists and therapists and counselors, because you'd have people that, probably study that at college, but then they cannot get a job back home because,
Mm-hmm.
those people not really looking to go to therapy because of XYZ. So starting those kind of things now will mean in the future, if
Mm-hmm.
children do go off to college and whatever, and that's what they want to do, they know they can get a job back home because now more people are open to seeking therapy and whatnot.
Well, it's all about adding value. If you add value to the job or to the position, then persons will seek it out. So definitely, I want to agree with that point.
What I have noticed, even with okay, the different challenges associated with people seeking therapy, one of the one of the hurdles I've heard, even in conducting sessions, is the idea of the issue of confidentiality.
Yeah,
I
Yes,
remember there was a, I remember there was a lady. She insisted she prefers to speak to her pillow rather than going for therapy. Okay, so you have people like that. They will tell you they don't want to. Abu, I'm not comfortable in speaking to anyone because they don't want their business outside.
right,
And
right,
at times, because they know me pretty well and how I deal with the issue, they would feel comfortable in speaking to me about the issues and so on and so forth, making some headway. So you have that situation, the issue of trust and the whole idea of confidentiality. People are pretty uncomfortable in speaking to others about it because of that issue.
yeah. What I would actually recommend for, like, the therapists and counselors we have now that, maybe want to help more people is, to kind of to what Delroy said about, a hotline or something. So like if they maybe have, maybe a local influencer that a lot of young people and older people
Mhm.
look up to, advertise that service and promote that service. And people will say, oh, let me give that a try. And they call knowing that, okay, they don't know that number, they don't know who's calling, then they can feel free to actually speak to that person or whatever. That's a good alternative for, the current counselors and so on that we have. Because
Mhm.
I mean, some people feel comfortable enough to post on what's the
Social
name of
media.
that one, the not the one on Facebook that people read, mind your business.
and your
Mm.
business. No,
Yes,
that's
yes,
Right,
even
they
good
will
here.
take it to the
exactly.
anonymous posts and so on, so people feel comfortable enough
Right. Or letter to or even our own letter to the editor on Dominican
right,
Right,
Breaking News
right, right.
or to Emo.
But
Um,
there are ways to create anonymous postings. But then again, will you get the necessary or the professional response that you need? You need because on a lot of those posts, what you find is a lot of bashing, a lot of stigma, a lot of
right.
yes.
But then again, that's for public consumption. That's for
exactly.
that's for thing. But like again, if
Exactly.
they push something like a secure hotline or something like that.
Right. I believe that is
Yeah,
would be the road to go. And it although like we were saying that our resource pool in terms of counselors and therapists is not great, but still we have a good number of therapists. What they can do is pull their resources together to create
Mhm.
some a hotline or websites or some forum where persons can reach out to them and they can give that assistance. I'm not too sure how we would fund it, but I'm sure there can be there's can be money
I sure
available.
it have some kind of software or app or something they could use to
Definitely
do
just
that.
about
Yeah.
Googling the app and finding out what app and then yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
it's it's data collectively.
go ahead, Abu.
Well, because there's a psychological association here in Dominica.
Yes, yes.
We do have that there. So it's they have to, they are the ones who are really experts in counseling. You have quite a range of individuals there in the group, and it's up to them to be able to develop and develop these strategies in order to reach a wider population.
true. I haven't heard much from them recently, but I'm hoping that as we sow the seed, maybe more and more will come from them, and we will hear more about it. As you know, in relation to what we're discussing, men's mental health, and it being November, we
Excuse
just
me.
felt it necessary to stir the pot a little so that persons can get to discussing the issue as it relates to men's mental health. So, in terms of what tips you would recommend to persons who are struggling currently, because there may be somebody listening to us now who may be struggling with some mental health issue. Are there any particular tips that you would like to leave our listeners or viewers with?
In clinical psychology, there's a saying that a positive thought cancels a negative thought.
Okay,
So if there is something reoccurring in your mind, then you have to do a lot of reflection on what is called metacognition. You're thinking how to think kind of way. You're going into your mind, and the mind is a very powerful thing. Thoughts are very powerful things. So, and how we interpret these thoughts. And if there is something you're dealing with a situation, then having these positive thoughts can really assist. There are two you can find along the way two kinds of problems: those that are solvable and those where the future is unknown. And a lot of times when people have issues where the future is unknown, they develop what is called anxiety attacks,
anxiety, right,
okay, and fear, unknown, fear of the unknown of the future. And one of the ways that if one does goes to a therapist or a counselor, the counselor during the therapy session will ask, what is the worst that you fear would happen? And based on when the counselor uncovers this deep fear, then want to be able to approach that. Now, if you don't have a counselor readily available, this is what a person has to try to resonate. What is the worst that you fear would
what
happen
happened,
in that
right,
particular situation of the unknown? And once you recognize the unknown, then a person can do some kind of self-help in terms of doing all the research. So let's say, for example, a person is fearful that he or she gets cancer, okay, for example. Or the person, let's say a person got involved in some risky sexual practice and did not use protection. And the person is fearful that he or she develops STI, that is the deepest in uncovering the unknown. Then this person can do some research about STI and how to cope, how to deal with things. If that person is fearful of getting, let's say, HIV, how do people how people deal with HIV? They could they could call out, reach out to the AIDS response unit and those kind of things, those kind of practical solutions, practical guidelines. Okay, to arm oneself with the sufficient knowledge in order to be able to navigate this particular situation that he or she is dealing with. Right? So these are some of the ways. Scientifically, spirituality works. The
right,
whole reliance on spirituality, the studies have shown that spirituality works. People who lean onto spirituality, it really works. And spirituality is a powerful outlet in dealing and managing with stress, especially again of the unknown. Things that one can solve that are solvable, one can go around and maybe speak to someone and can be able to solve. When speaking to a person, get a different opinion and you might get a different perspective in arriving at the solution
right,
to that problem. But on the other hand, a lot of these problems are unknown and one needs to be able to take these steps. Another tip again is the idea of exercise. Sometimes too, a person might be in suffering from major depression, where this person now is suffering from is think contemplating suicide, or they're not in the mood to do any kind of activities. They just want to stay in. their sleeping is affected, their eating is affected when a person goes through. All of these are symptoms of major depression. So when one has that, they need the family support to really, maybe someone to visit at home or that sort of thing. Those things. So some of these tips, you need family support to deal with something like that when it has reached that stage. You go through distress, and it goes on to depression and all of these different illnesses. Then you need mental illness, then you would need that third party intervention at times, because sometimes some people, they are so much in a state they can't even think properly.
Right,
Some
right.
people, they are so much in a state that their hair is unkept, they don't take a bath and all these things. So they need the third party intervention to deal with that. So most times, yes, some people can take tips, they can assist themselves, but the reality is there are other times when you need a third party, you need some
Good
kind of
thoughts.
intervention in
That's right.
regard.
That's right.
Mhm.
But I remember remember I was speaking to my experience earlier. You know what worked
Yes.
for writing. That's when I picked up the pen and I started to write, and I became
Powerful.
more, yeah. So I have my ex girlfriend and my girlfriend to thank for me becoming a writer. So yeah, it's only
Yeah,
to
Right.
I feel like something that works for me personally, like, if whenever I'm sad or anything, I feel like having good hobbies
Mhm.
right.
is a great way as well. So, I like reading, I like binge watching series and that kind of thing. It just kind of, you know, gets me away from the stress. So I feel like having
Mhm.
those kind of good outlets because, for some people, rum is their outlet, but if they have a more positive way to kind of get them,
Mhm.
just something that makes you happy,
Mhm.
because for some people, they can be so consumed in their sadness and in their
Mhm.
anxiety or whatever, but like just give them like 10 minutes of happiness and it kind of helps them get through the rest of the day.
You know what
Mhm.
helps me a lot? Sleeping. I don't know for some, but yeah, I can
I
sleep.
don't really like to sleep, but I like food, good
No, not,
food.
not, not, not normal sleeping like a power nap. No, no, like yeah, like
Mm.
a
Understand?
quick
Yes.
nap, 30 minutes for
Mhm.
45 minutes, and I'm all good again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For me,
that's
Yes.
sometimes I could be upset and I just need to eat like, a
your
good
favorite
piece
food.
of cake or something
Right,
and,
Mhm.
just a few minutes of happiness.
Mhm. Yes, people have different strategies, and there are quite a number of different strategies. That some people do meditation, there's deep breathing. There are a number of things. Music,
music, music.
yes, people
Yeah,
do a number of things to
reggae
cope.
music.
Yes,
Trust me. Yeah,
so
I was thinking
I,
about
people do
music
that.
too because it's like it have a music for every mood.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Yes, I get you. So yeah, there are a number of different tips, and I think, well, what I will say to people, to to the listening, to the audience, is mental health is something that one has to take just as cautionary as one's physical health, and one has to always, usually, you have to continuously assess yourself, assess how you feel,
Right.
and so on. And all of these things are very important. One, the more you assess yourself and always aware of yourself, then it curbs when one gets into situations to get into distress and depression,
Yeah.
because one will be able to realize, I'm going in distress mode, something is not right, I need to get some assistance. You see, because that person is now aware of themselves, but if of his or herself. However, if the person is not aware and they're just going about their everyday, they're lingering, they don't care, they can get into that urge. Although there are times too, the body gets into a shock, let's say the death of someone, or
Yeah.
those kind of things, right? These occurrences, divorce, is one of them. Let's say you're in a marriage and you're going for divorce, where you have to deal with the courts and all that. That's a lot of
Right.
stress. Okay, death of a spouse, all of these things. they can really place a shock on the body. And when one gets that shock, if the person does not respond to that trauma in quick time, then that person can go into deep depression. Can
That's
go into
right.
deep.
Yeah, no, that was a good point because I feel like a lot of people are not self aware in general. So I feel like that's a good place to start just for your journey on personal
Mhm.
development. And I also
Okay.
feel like I hope a lot of women are watching this episode too because sometimes they might be the reason why, some men just don't open up because sometimes it may have a man, maybe he didn't know, really how to,
Mhm.
maybe he wasn't raised necessary to express his feelings or so on, but maybe he get in a
Mhm.
relationship and he might have
Mhm.
been open to it, but then sometimes some women, they really kind of feed into that negative thing where the
Mhm.
man not really feeling like he can speak to the woman because she either throw it back on him or
Oh
mock him
yes,
or that kind of
very
thing.
dangerous. Mhm.
As a woman yourself, you have to be that kind of support for your boyfriend to kind of encourage him to speak his mind, to express his feelings and whatnot, because otherwise, then you're just going to continue that pattern of, well, he should never cry, he should never
Mm.
do such thing, and then he just going to continue that same thing with his own son.
And that's the thing about those type of things. Mental health issues can be passed on for genes, the
Yeah,
DNA.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
we have to be very careful how we pass on how we pass on from one
Trauma.
generation to the next, trauma from one generation to the
Mm.
next. And if we can look towards our own healing, we should definitely move in that direction. And like Abu said, self-assessment and self-awareness are two important things that we need to take into consideration. But a lot of people don't even understand what it is to be self-aware or how
yeah,
to go about doing a self-assessment. That's the thing too. So we have a lot of teaching to do, a lot of
Mhm.
absorbing to do, a lot of relearning to do, because some of the things that we were taught as young people are even for our socialization, we realize as we grow up now that a lot of those things were trauma responses. And if we're no longer dealing with those types of trauma, we need to evolve as individuals.
Of course.
So,
Another thing that,
yeah,
without tripping you, as we are talking about that, it is, you see, because right now we live in a time where many places in the world they go through. I mean, you have the whole idea of inflation and the working class, all of these socioeconomic challenges. And as a result of that, you have the working class families, they have to work twice as hard. They have to have jobs. They have to, in other words, people are in survival mode
right,
because they want to make ends meet here. We know that in Dominica. Now, what happens when you have these kinds of situations is people do not take the time to even take a time off,
you're right,
right? To
right.
get
right,
to get some time off or proper recreation or to have a proper holiday or vacation. And this is where, when you have these breaks, one can have the opportunity to do that reflection, to reflect on one's life, to reflect on oneself. That is where it starts, And once you develop the habit and really keeping yourself and as to what do you want, what are your passions, what are your dreams, what are your goals, what were your challenges. When you start asking yourself these questions and so on, it's very, very healthy, very
sure,
healthy for one to do so. The whole idea of recreating and spending time with oneself in solace, in solitude, and so on, or even having a loving, constructive partner to really have these conversations with can really go a
right.
long way.
And that makes a difference, a big difference in terms of having a partner, supportive partner,
Very
Yeah,
much
because
so.
trust me, a shoulder lean on in a difficult time is
Very
priceless,
important. Oh,
priceless.
absolutely. There is almost nothing that beats that, to have a loving shoulder. Yes, so I
Right.
understand. Mm.
yeah.
So,
So I feel
Yeah.
like we covered a lot tonight, and
Mhm.
I'm very happy that we were able to, really discuss ways that we can probably improve on mental health in general, not just for men, but in
Mhm.
general. And I hope everyone listening took away something, or, I hope it made you think about something that you could possibly implement in your own life.
Well, I know what I'm going to take away from this conversation tonight. In terms of developing my self-awareness, and also probably I'm looking at ways on to do self-assessments, because although
Mhm.
I would say I'm a very positive person, but like Abu say, every now and then we have to take a step back and do some awareness and do some self assessment. So my takeaway from tonight is to sit back maybe over the next couple of days and do a little self awareness. Yeah. So thanks again for that, Abu.
You're most welcome.
You left a mark.
I appreciate that. No problem. It was a pleasure speaking with you all. I really do appreciate you inviting me to the program. When you told me about it, I was like, okay, that is something we can discuss about, and I look forward to it. And I wanted to make sure that I'm on time, everything's in order. From about 5 to 7, I set up my cameras, I set up everything to make sure that 7:30 I'm in.
And
So right.
we definitely appreciate your contribution tonight. And if you are still listening to my voice, that means you've basically been through the tonight's journey with us, and you've been listening. And I'm hoping that you get something that you can take away from tonight's program. I want again to
Yes,
thank our
I take away,
guest, Mr.
yes, I take away
Daru.
the different. Yeah, sorry, I can take away the different perspective, especially the hotline and so on, the different tips is really good. I really yeah learned I really learned myself from the hearing different perspectives.
Right, right. Any takeaways, Tikia, before we end the program?
Well, really, I just liked your idea of the hotline, and I hope somebody take it and run with it.
That's a good idea. It's a really good idea.
So thanks again for joining us. The sound of my voice is going to get a lot quieter as we end tonight's program. I want to thank you, all our viewers, for tuning in, for being with us, for sharing the past 50 something plus minutes with us. I'm hoping that you learned something very instrumental. We want to thank you for welcoming us into your world. And so, once again, good night from the dread.
Unite from the Shabin.
And be sure to join us on our next episode. We will release the topic very, very soon, so you'll be aware. As we said, tonight was our very first official topic. So we thanks that you joined us, and we also want to say enjoy the rest of your evening, day, night, or whatever time of
Yeah,
the day
whatever.
you're listening to
Yeah.
us. Yeah, and we're hoping that you'll be here to join us in the next episode. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
Okay. Have a good night, Mr. Daru.
You
Good
too.
night. Good night.
Good evening.